and we will start. Okay, you're live now.
Right, good morning everyone. Can I welcome you all to the meeting, and for the benefit of anyone who might be watching us where we're being streamed, is it on YouTube? Then welcome to the meeting as well. My name is Adrian Axford. I'm one of the councillors for Ryde, and the members of the committee who are present, perhaps you can wave or something when I announce you so that people know who you are, because we haven't got our names up. I don't know why. Sometimes the names are up and sometimes they're not. Right, so let's see who's here. Barry Abraham, these are councillors. Barry Abraham.
Yeah, I'm here.
Right, well, give us a wave, Barry. Like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Very good. Debbie Andre. Thank you. Paul Brading may be late. Is Paul Brading here yet? No, so he may be here later. Vanessa Churchman. Vanessa is waving. If I'm doing this meeting for the first time from home, rather than going into County Hall and having a battery of advisors around me. If my broadband goes down because it's a bit unreliable, then Vanessa is the vice chairman and Vanessa will take over the meeting. And I've been asked to ask you to put your chat bar up in case people want to speak if you're taking over when it comes to that. Right, the next person is Councillor Andrew Garrett. Could you give us a wave, Andrew? Thank you. Councillor Graham Perks. Hello, Graham. And we also have Steve Milford, who is not a councillor, but he's an employee representative. Steve, give us a wave. Thank you. Up there in my top left-hand corner, but maybe in different places for you. As I understand it, no apologies have been received except for Paul Brading, who is in another meeting and will join us a little bit later. There are also a number of officers, board members and external representatives in attendance. Could I particularly point out our technical finance manager? Perhaps you could switch your video on, Joe. This is Mrs. Jo Thistlewood, who is our technical finance manager, stalwart of the pension fund, who does all the work. And you will hear a lot from her during the meeting, just to know who she is. Thank you, Jo. Just to confirm, new legislation is in place which allows meetings to be held remotely by whichever means are available to the local authority, which is why we're using Teams today. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they're being used for the meeting. All participants should be reminded to allow for a slight pause prior to speaking for technology to catch up and display correctly. And I would ask everyone, please only speak when I ask you to do so. And remember to turn your microphone and video on before you speak. If we have to vote, sometimes we note things where we don't actually have to hold a vote, but if there is a vote, it will be taken by a roll call, and the officer will call out your names. When your name is called, please confirm whether you wish to vote for, against, or abstain. If the committee resolves to exclude the public and press, the live stream will be stopped. Now, I do have one thing to say about the order of the meeting today. Because of both technical difficulty and confidentiality, one of our guests, which is the UBS contingent, have asked whether their part of the meeting can be held in confidential session. So this is a combination of commercial confidentiality and also their wishes to give us as long as possible. So the items which involve them are items 4 and 5. And so with your agreement, I will move those to later on in the meeting, which will be immediately after item 11, before item 12, when we exclude the public and press. So they will come in just before the access update. And also they have technical problems, which means that we won't be able to see them. They're joining by phone, I understand anyway, audio only. And somebody here, maybe Megan, will be putting up the slides for their presentation. So please bear with us. We're trying to do the best we can in the circumstances, so the order of play will be slightly different from as published. Okay, so let's start on the agenda. Have we got, sorry, the minutes is the first item, that pages 7 to 12. You've had circulated the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November. Can I ask if there are any queries on the minutes? Are there any objections or anything? In which case they are considered to be approved. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Can I invite members to declare any interest they might have in any matters on the agenda? Anyone have anything to declare? No? Okay, in which case, sorry, you can indicate via the chat function if you wish to declare an interest, but if not, we'll move on. Item 3 is public question time. Are there any written questions, please?
No, Chairman, no written questions have been received.
Right, so that we don't need item 3. So items 4 and 5, as I mentioned just now, are going to be moved later in the meeting to the confidential session. So we move on to item 6. This is to record the decision from the selection panel on the 4th of December for the infrastructure allocation. I think several members of this committee were present at that, but I will hand over to Joe Thistlewood to present this report. And could you note that appendices 1 and 2 are confidential, please? Right, is Joe there? Yes, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. This is just a formalisation of the decision that was made at the infrastructure selection panel on the 4th of December to appoint Partners Group Direct Infrastructure 2020 Fund as the Isle of Wight Council Pension Fund's infrastructure investment solution. There were 3 presentations received, all of which were interesting and different in their own ways. And following the panel, which is outlined, the composition of the panel is outlined in paragraph 5 on page 26 of the members' packs, it was agreed that Partners Group Direct Infrastructure Fund would be the appropriate solution. We have been in conversation with Partners Group subsequent in advance of this meeting, and I can confirm that Partners Group have agreed to opt up the Isle of Wight Council to a professional investor status under the MiFID II directive, which means that we are entitled to invest in this product and have foregone some non-professional investor protections as part of that. There's nothing to worry about from that. It is a standard functionality of these types of investment classes. We have received the substantial information pack from partners with the forms, etc., that we need to complete to get this up and running. And the indication is that the first investment will happen sometime in the middle of March 2021, so just before the end of the financial year. The 2 appendices, which are, as the chairman mentioned, confidential, contain the presentation slides that were given at the selection day, and also a report from Hymans Robertson confirming that this solution fits our investment strategy and does what we need it to do. If I could move members to the recommendation, sorry, I'll take any questions in a moment, but if I could move the recommendation at paragraph 26 on page 28, that the committee approves the selection of Partners Group Direct Infrastructure 2020 Fund for the delivery of the fund's infrastructure allocation. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have at this point.
Right, I'll just wait to see if there are any questions, but in the meantime, can I say that in fact more than half of the people here today were on that panel, and we made a recommendation but we can only make a recommendation to the full committee, so it has to be approved today. Are there any questions for Joe, please?
Councillor Andre has a question in the chat bar.
Right.
May I come in, Chairman?
Yes, please. Sorry, I was reading you saying the public can only see the person in the red box.
Yes.
But, okay.
Public can only see who is live. That's my understanding. Thank you very much for putting this recommendation forward. Yes, I was on the panel. Can I just clarify? You've said that in moving from a non-professional status to a professional status, that obviously that we have had to give up some protections. I'm not asking for necessarily the detail of what those protections are, but just for your reassurance, Joe, that you are confident that that is the right thing for us to do moving forward, because obviously this is a long-term view, so that in giving up those protections, that is the right thing for us to be doing long-term. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Andre. Yes, it is the right thing to do. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a technicality. Some of the protections wouldn't apply to us as a corporate body to an extent anyway, but because of the nature and the complexity of the investment class, there is a requirement for us to be treated as a professional investor rather than a retail investor, so that we can acknowledge the heightened risk to an extent of and the complexity of the product, and we've demonstrated that we understand what we're letting ourselves in for, and to an extent then those protections that would come as a retail investor for the individual on the street effectively are not required. The main reason that we need to do this is because if we don't elect for professional investor status, we are not eligible to receive those products because of the nature and the complexity of them. So it's a European directive which is still in application, even though we're not technically in Europe anymore. And I believe it's being brought into UK legislation again, but we will still need to apply. So at the moment, it's not a problem. There's nothing sinister about it. It is just assuring the investment manager to an extent that we are cognizant of our risks and cognizant of the complexity of the project that we're undertaking.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up. Can you confirm that that just applies to this particular fund in terms of our professional status, or does this have an impact on any other? Presumably that's only relevant to this particular fund.
This is, as Emma Garrett from Hymans has mentioned in the chat bar, this is a standard procedure for a pension scheme, because of the nature of all of the products that we're in as a pension fund, the equity, the fixed income, the property solutions, private debt. We have been required by all of our investment managers to opt up to professional status, and the council has also had to do this for its treasury management products as well, so the money market funds and all of the solutions that we have. It's just standard protection for both the fund managers and for the investor to acknowledge the complexity of those products, some of which aren't suitable for individual investors. As I say, it's an additional complexity that we now have to opt up to become professional investor status. Previously to the MiFID directive, it was assumed that we would be professional status, so there was no election, but now to make it more transparent, all pension schemes and local authorities and professional investors have to opt up.
Thank you very much for that clarification, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any more questions, please? In which case, can I move from the chair the recommendation, which is to approve the selection of the Partners Group Direct Infrastructure Fund to deliver the infrastructure allocation? Could I have a seconder, please? Debbie? And Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Abraham.
4.
Councillor Andre.
4.
Councillor Churchman.
4.
Councillor Garrett.
4.
Councillor Perks.
4.
And Councillor Axford.
4.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. You will remember that we, as an overall policy, some while back, we decided that we would branch into 2 different kinds of new investments. One was the one we've just been talking about, infrastructure, and the other is the private debt, which we dealt with in the same way at our last meeting. And so it'd be interesting to hear what progress has been made on this, on the private debt side, as we're sort of one step ahead on that. So perhaps I can ask Joe Thistlewood to come back in on that to tell us. You've got pages 67 to 70 on there. Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. So as Councillor Axford has just mentioned, we are one stage ahead. We ratified this solution at the last meeting, and subsequent to that, as set out in the paper, we have completed all of the contractual documentation before Christmas, and everything was up and running. As I was initially writing this report, I was about to write in paragraph 13 that no call had been received. However, as I was writing the report, the first call for investment was received. The first call for investment has actually now been completed. The initial subscription of $9.6 million was facilitated on Monday this week. So the fund disinvested £8.2 million from its Majedi UK equities holding held via the Access Pool, and in preparation for that, and converted that into US dollars to make the payment on Monday this week. The US dollar payment actually converted to just under 7.1 million sterling. So there is an additional balance of £1.1 million, which is sitting in the pension fund's operational bank account, and will be used to support ongoing activities, including the payment of benefits to its members. So that is the first call on this investment. The first investment that we made is 25% of our initial allocation, and it has been acknowledged that funding has been received by the investment manager and is in process. I think really this is just for noting for information, but just to keep you updated that future reports to this committee will be made on the progress and additional investment in both infrastructure and private debt investments. I'm happy to take any questions if members have them.
Are there any questions for Joe on this, please? Yes, Vanessa.
Not so much a question, Joe, but a very good time to convert dollars, because I think it's running at 36 or 36.1 at the moment. This time last year, I think it was down to 32 and even dropped below 30 at some stage. So we really have got a good deal at the moment. Thank you.
And I have just a brief comment from Emma Garrett. Emma, do you want to say something on this? You say this is a standard procedure for a pension scheme.
That was in reference to the MiFID opt-up professional status, but I would confirm Vanessa's point that the exchange rate is favourable for the payment that you made to GSAM just now. So,
lovely, thank you. And then Steve Milford has a question.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just note that these calls can be a fairly short notice and for fairly large sums. I'll be confident that the managers where the funds are coming from, Majedi, etc., are able to sell in a sort of managed way that doesn't incur losses from having to sell quickly or anything like that.
Chair, if I may respond to that,
Yes.
The fund manager Goldman Sachs have indicated that there should be around 15 working days notice given for these drawdowns, and if you look at the timetable that is set out for this drawdown in paragraph 18 of the report on page 69 of the pack. We have the timetable that was followed for this this drawdown is consistent with what is likely to happen in future drawdowns. So we have sufficient time to notify the disinvesting manager, as well as receive the money and convert it into US dollars to make the payments. Just for clarity, members, the reason why we withdrew so much, which seems to be excessive compared to the amount that we needed to pay for the US dollar amount to convert, is we wanted to include a buffer just in case something went drastically odd with the exchange rate, particularly in this case given the timing of it, with some fairly substantial activities in the US in terms of presidential inaugurations, etc. So we just wanted to make sure we had sufficient. I mean, it's not a problem. It is just one of those things you can never plan how foreign exchange is going to work, so we just wanted to be on the safe side.
Okay,
Does that answer your question, Steve? Sorry.
Okay, Steve.
Excellent.
Are there any more questions? In which case, are you happy that we note the progress towards this? Okay, that's noted. Thank you. So let's move on to item number 8, to do with the annual compliance statement for the CMA. Again, over to Joe.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Chairman, I'm just distracted. My puppy is climbing up the back of the sofa. Apologies for that.
He can join in if he wants to.
Yes, I may have to. Sorry. So this is an annual compliance statement that is required for a directive that was issued by the Competitions and Markets Authority back in 2019 for ensuring that appropriate standards of contract management effectively for investment consultancy and fiduciary management fund managers are complied with. The paper that is presented at page 71 onwards of this report sets out what the order required and what we have had to set as a compliance with. The appendix to this report shows the compliance statement that was submitted in line with the timetable, signed by Councillor Axford as chairman of the committee. This kind of slipped a little bit through my radar, but we managed to submit the declaration in due course and in line with the appropriate timetable. What we are planning to do at the next committee meeting on the 3rd of March is have a look at the objectives that were set for the investment consultants back in December 2019 and review their performance against that and confirm that those objectives are still valid. That was not necessarily required for this consultation and confirmation statement, but we do need to make sure that we include that in future work plans. And also I will be bringing this, I've built this into the work plan for the committee so that we've got this to consider in due course in time for next year's annual compliance statement. I would happy to take any questions. I may need to defer to Emma if there is anything excessively technical on this, but we will look at this in a little bit more detail going forward at next meeting, and we will consider this in greater detail this time next year for the next compliance statement. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Debbie, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the fact that we I mean, obviously we do need to make the compliance statement, but I know there's a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and also to submit it by the required deadline. So I would like to move a vote of thanks, if you feel appropriate, Chair, from the Chair to our technical finance manager for her hard work on this.
That's very, very kind thought. Thank you for that, Debbie. And I'm sure that other members of the committee would wish to join in with that. Jo always works very hard, as she tells me. And sorry, didn't you catch that? No, seriously, you are a tower of strength, Joe. And the only comment I would make is that you've probably seen the letter which I sent to whoever it is, the CMA. And unfortunately, I was not allowed to travel into County Hall to sign it. And I've been quite alarmed by the number of times I've been told from County Hall and from Ryde Town Council office, oh, it doesn't matter, you don't have to come in, we've got your signature on file anyway, we'll sign it here. So I hope they don't get hold of my bank statements, that's all. No, thank you very much,
Sorry,
Joe.
Chair, can I just, thank you. Can I just respond by saying I want to pass my gratitude on to Emma from Hymans, because she did give me a lot of support in this. So thank you, Emma, for your support in this, as always.
Good, thank you. Okay, so that is item 8. Can we note that? Is everybody happy for us to note it? No objections? Thank you. And then we're going to look at our future meeting dates and development sessions. And you've got all sorts of dates on there in the paperwork. This is pages 77 to 84. And could I ask Joe, please, to lead on this as well?
Of course, thank you, Chairman. The combination of items to consider under this agenda item, principally to note, first of all, the meeting dates that have been arranged. I believe these are already in the corporate calendar and should therefore be in members' diaries. If they're not, these are the dates on paragraph 3 on page 77. Please can you make sure that they are in your calendars and that you are available to attend, or let us know if there is anything. The meetings are still remaining on a Wednesday morning, and until further notice, unfortunately, will be held virtually via MS Teams. I would draw your attention, members, to the meeting that is scheduled for the 28th of April. Whilst this is theoretically in the pre-election period, assuming that the elections are still happening on the 7th of May or whenever it is, the monitoring officer, 6th of May, apologies. The monitoring officer has indicated that this meeting can still go ahead, as the pension funds is not a political committee, so therefore it can continue during that pre-election period. So there will be items on the agenda that we will need to consider, so please be aware of that, and we will keep you obviously up to date as and when, if matters change on that matter. I've also drawn members' attention to the meetings of the local pension board, which are held on a quarterly basis, again held on Wednesday mornings and virtually. Members of the committee are always welcome to attend the board meetings. They do look at standards of governance and administration, and quite often we'll discuss matters that are being brought to the committee's attention in terms of the review of policies, etc., etc. I have included as Appendix 1 to this report a very draft work plan for committee meetings and board meetings over the next corporate year. Unfortunately, it is very blank at the moment, but there will be sufficient items on each agenda item to continue having these number of meetings. Because we I just haven't had a chance to look through and plan all of the work plan at the moment, but I will keep that up to date as and when it happens. So that really is just the first piece for information to get dates into members' diaries and acknowledgement of meeting requirements. I would like to have a conversation, really a discussion with members around the process for the operation of development workshops. Over the last 12 months, we have been holding those development workshops in the afternoon after the Pension Fund Committee meeting, when we were all in one place. and having the actual meetings, it was easier to have a break between the meetings, have a small lunch, and then go into the afternoon sessions, because you were all in the same place at the same time, and that was sometimes not the easiest thing to achieve. Acknowledging now that we are on virtual meetings, having a 2-hour or 2.5-hour meeting in the morning, and then even with a break going into another 1-hour virtual session in the afternoon, is taxing for all members of the committee and officers and supporting advisors. So what we need to consider is how is the best way to run these development sessions, which we will be needing over the course of the next 12 months. So really what I'm seeking is some advice or some thoughts from committee members as to how it is best to run development sessions in general, but then also to look more specifically at a specific ESG and responsible investment workshop that was deferred from November, was supposed to be today, but isn't, so needs to be held quite quickly so that we can take that forward. So there's two kind of asks in this part of the agenda, which is to look at, firstly, I think how we run development workshops in future, but also probably more pressingly, when is convenient for members to run this ESG workshop, which I've set some potential dates in February on paragraph 13 on page 79 of this report. So I'm happy to I can circulate to an extent a doodle poll if that would help members to select and get a priority for that one. But otherwise, I will do that after this meeting. I see nods from Councillor Garrett and other members. But in terms of the general workshop, I'd welcome some input, and I noticed that Councillor Perks had his hand up.
Yes, Graham Perks, would you like to chip in?
I'm sure I'm in the same boat as most other people, that getting to meetings for 1 hour and going from Ventnor to Newport, etc., it finishes up being a 3-hour round trip, because you generally find, you're doing other jobs as well. Would it, certainly it would suit me a lot better to get up earlier in the mornings and start the pensions meetings at 9:30 and then tack the extra meeting on at the end of it, so we would still finish at the same time and leave the rest of the day free. And whether the other people can, I know some people have commitments in the mornings, but for me, at 9:30 would be easy to start a meeting and leave the rest of the day free after 1:30. Thank you.
Okay, Graham, thank you. I take your point, and I'm the other way around. I have commitments in the morning that I can't get to any meetings before 10 o'clock. But I take the point, and obviously we have to look at the what the majority of people would like to do. These are extras. Don't forget, we're talking about development sessions, training sessions, not the full meetings. Barry, and then welcome, Paul. Have you been here for a long time? I've just spotted you.
No, apologies. I've just managed to join, Adrian. I've been my previous meeting's just finished. Apologies.
Lovely, thank you for joining us. And the only thing you need to know is that we've had to defer the UBS items till the confidential session, so that the meeting will be slightly out of order. Okay, that's items 4 and 5. Somebody else is waving. Barry.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, I would have preferred, like Councillor Perks, to have done it a bit earlier, but I'm quite happy to fit in with other people. And I do see that the question I was going to ask has actually been put up. It's about are these still going to be virtual meetings? Because I think some of these meetings actually work quite well doing it virtually. You can do it from home. You don't have to go into County Hall. And as Graham said, you can actually diary your time much better than you can when you've got to go into County Hall. As I say, I don't know how other people feel about that.
That's a good point. Thank you, Barry. Vanessa, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just to throw a spanner in the works, the current COVID legislation ceases on the 6th of May of this year. The government are either going to have to reintroduce legislation etc. Chris Potter is working hard on this along with Paul Thistlewood. They've tried using the Local Government Act to get round it, but we're talking about public meetings only. We're not talking about a development session. And I agree, some things work very well online. And if we have the development session online, that's okay with me. But as I said, I will point out, as from the 6th of May, we really don't know what is going to happen regarding, and I stress again, public meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. I mean, obviously, we're not the only council in the whole country that needs to put pressure on the government. They're going to have to change the rules for everybody, aren't they? And who knows whether the elections will be on the 6th of May anyway. It seems very uncertain to me. Steve Milford is the next question. Steve.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was linked. The last one was linked to the question I was going to ask, which is, if we do return to physical meetings, then clearly bolting one meeting onto another makes a meeting, then a training session immediately after does make sense, because obviously you're in the same place. You don't obviously have to do that if you've got virtual meetings. The training sessions can be almost when you like. Just a personal observation in terms of when we do return to physical meetings, and some people might want to carry on meeting virtually. I think it's got to be an either or, because the physical meeting with some people physically there in one place and some people trying to log in through virtual access doesn't work well in my experience. So I think they either have to be one or the other.
Yes, I agree with that. Okay, Joe, so I think what Steve's saying is that if we're having a virtual meeting, then they don't have to tag on the end of another meeting. But if we're having a physical meeting, then it's not a bad idea while we're all in County Hall to go on and spend another hour. But we do then need to make sure that the first meeting, the full meeting, public meeting, doesn't go on too long. So otherwise, we're all brain dead by the time we start the training.
Okay,
so
thank you,
Chairman. Can I encourage everybody then, please read on page 79. Can you read what Jo is saying there? She's asking us to say what suitable dates would be for the first meeting on social RI, responsible investing, and then in 14, in effect, what we've just been talking about. Are you going to put round a questionnaire, Jo? Did you say?
I will put through a questionnaire. I'll do two. I think I'll do two doodle polls, if I can say doodle polls.
Right.
I'll do the first one for the ESG RI workshop, which will have those 5 dates in there, and I'll ask members to select a preference, and we'll have to go with the one that is most popular. And then I think, whilst we are still in this virtual world and will be subject to current legislation for development sessions anyway, I would also suggest that I will put some times to say, if we're having virtual meetings, we don't really want to have a virtual meeting in the afternoon of the same day. So I'll just suggest ask some questions about what is the best time for people to have virtual meetings. Obviously, I'm very cognizant of the fact that members have other priorities and members have other workloads that they need to fit in. But if we are to continue to improve the standards that we are and maintain the good standards that we have with the pension fund, these development sessions are very important. So I will send those doodle polls around, and thank you very much for your input so far.
Thank you, Jo. I think that does perhaps alter the recommendation there, because we're planning to take a vote, but I think that was if we'd agreed on a date for item 2, is that right? I think we maybe just have to note these items instead now. We don't need to vote.
I think we don't need to vote on this one, no. I think we can just say that recommendations 16 and 17 will be considered outside of the meeting, and so the recommendation that is only required is item 15, which is to note the agreed schedule of meeting dates and the draft work plan for those meetings.
Lovely. Is everybody happy for us to note that? Thank you. That's noted then. Let's move on to item 10, which is items circulated for members' attention. Do you want to run through these, Joe, and tell us any significant ones?
Yes, certainly. I think, to be perfectly honest, there's not anything drastically significant in that. The period up to cover December was really in the run up to Christmas. Obviously, everybody knows that. I didn't need to tell you. So there wasn't a lot of activity going on other than the general updating emails that come through in terms of the Hyman's edit and local government pension committee bulletins, etc., etc. I would remind members of the Hyman's webinars, the Keeping the LGPS Connected webinars that are half an hour every fortnight. I do try to send those invitations round as and when I receive them. They are very useful. I know Councillor Axford has been attending most of them, and when I can't attend, I rely on Councillor Axford's notes to tell me what's gone on in those sessions so I can follow them through. So do attend if you can. They are literally half an hour on a webinar and they cover some interesting topics. There's one coming up next week, I think, in terms of the pensions ombudsman and their process for dealing with complaints and the resolution of those issues. We have been fortunate so far to not have been involved, as far as I'm aware, with any claims that have gone to the ombudsman for the pension fund, but it would be useful to be forearmed and forewarned just in case anything comes through. But unless members have got any specific questions on any of those items that are circulated or wish to change the way that things are communicated, I'm happy to just note that those items have been sent through.
Right, I've got a note here on the chat bar from Reg Barry. Joe, will you include the board? Is that to do with this one, or am I just picked that up from before?
I think that's in terms of the doodle polls and the meeting dates for the workshops, and absolutely, Reg, I will include the board members in those circulations and take account of their preferences.
Thank you very much.
So sorry, dodging between items now. So back to item 10 again. Is everybody happy for us just to note which items, those items that have been circulated? No objections. Okay, in which case we'll say that is noted. Item 11, members' question time. Do we have any members' questions, please? Megan?
No, Chairman, no written questions have been received.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're planning to move a motion to exclusion of public and press. As I said to you earlier on, the UBS people are going to be joining us next. I think they've been booked, I think that's right, isn't it, Megan, for 11:30? Can we bring them in a few? We're going to have a 5-minute comfort break anyway.
Yes, Chairman, if you wanted to pass the resolution, and then after that, if you take a 5 or 10-minute comfort break, we make sure that the live stream is stopped, and then when we come back, we'll contact the UBS attendees and make sure that they're here to present their presentation.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, in which case, I will move the exclusion of the public and press. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Do you want to do a roll call, Megan?
Yes, Councillor Abraham.
4.
Councillor Andre.
4.
Councillor Brading.
4.
Councillor Churchman.
4.
Councillor Garrett.
4.
Councillor Perks.
4.
And Councillor Axford.
4.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we will close the meeting then for any members of the public who are present. I think I was just thinking earlier on, I think in the 4 years that I've been chairman, we've had one member of the public come to one of our meetings. So if there is anybody there today, you've doubled our attendance for the term. So thank you very much to the public for watching in, and goodbye. Everybody else, it's suggested that we have a comfort break for